I despise Persona 3 FES's gameplay, but I really want to experience the character development and the story. How can I do that? What is going on, everyone? It is your boy, Frosty R&B, the Frostman himself. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Persona 3 manga series. So if you're only interested to see what the manga has to offer, Chapters tool will be in the description, so you can skip ahead to the manga section and see what we will discuss. But if you're brand new to Persona 3 and never played the game before, we're going to be talking about the various different forms of media for Persona 3, and of course some of the differences between the two main versions that a lot of the fandom always debates on. So with that being said, let's get started. Starting with the games. Persona 3 has 3 different games. The vanilla version, FES, which stands for Festival, and is more of a completed version than the vanilla game, and of course Portable for the PSP. The fandom will often compare FES versus Portable. If you really want to get the best experience for story and characters, FES is the version for you. Be warned though, if you're going to be playing FES without no modifications or whatsoever, you're gonna have a hard time with the gameplay. Why? Lack of party member control. That is the worst decision among turn-based JRPG in history, in my personal opinion. Luckily, Portable fixes that, but it's a bit more difficult. Persona 3 manga does not talk about the female protagonist from Persona 3 Portable, which is exclusive, because the manga version is the FES version. Then there are the spin-off games, and of course, Persona 3 has 4 movie film adaptations to retell the main story, which is actually surprisingly my favorite adaptation for Persona 3. And let's go ahead and dive straight into this. Breaking down the Persona 3 manga series, there are 11 volumes grand total. However, I'm only going to be covering volumes 1 and 2 for this video due to the fact that Atlus is very sensitive with their IPs. Immediately looking at the Persona 3 manga series, the cover artwork illustrations are beautifully hand-drawn. And for those who are curious, the publisher is by Udon Entertainment. Story and artist was by Shuji Sogabe from 2007 to 2017. So as of this recording, the entire manga series is pretty much finished. And Atlus is very aware that the Persona 3 manga series does exist. However, it's not canon to the main story. Of course, because this is a manga series, you read it from right to left, not left to right like how we usually do in Western. Now, for those who have a completely different cover artwork for Volume 1, yours is actually a special edition from Loot Crate Box, but this is the cover artwork from the Loot Crate Box edition. And it is worth noting that the book is glossy itself. Every volume, with the exception of volume 11, has a beautifully drawn glossy page artwork that's in color. Now you may be asking me, why is some of the writing in French? To answer that question, the artist, if I'm not mistaken, is a huge fan, one of the characters who actually speaks French. So if you do see like chapters saying like un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Sorry, my French is really bad. I'm not fluent in French. These are actually intended this way, and these volumes are in English. So it begins our story in Persona 3 with our main character, Minato Arisato. But you may know the protagonist in Persona 3 known as Makoto Yuki from the game, and of course, the movie adaptations. I will be referring to him as Makoto Yuki. And why are we starting here, you may be asking, instead of the very beginning? As soon as you turn to the next page, yeah, that is a huge problem with Persona 3 manga series because it says 7 months ago. And more about that discussion at the end of volume 2. Persona 3 takes place from the years of 2009 to 2010. Our story begins on April 6th on Monday. Makoto Yuki is moving to Port Tatsumi Island by via train. And as you guys can see, for those who are not familiar with Persona 3, you'll notice some of the lyrics from Burn My Dread, which is an awesome song, by the way. And of course, upon arrival, Makoto sees some weird things going on. Makoto continues to walk along. He arrives at his dorm. And upon arrival, he meets with a little boy who asks him to sign a contract. Makoto meets with a girl who apparently is carrying a gun, which is very sketchy. But upon interruption, of course, we meet the best waifu in all of Persona 3. Without a doubt, no contest. Mitsuru Kirijo, who apparently was anticipating our arrival, but we just came in very late. Yukari Takeba, which was the girl that Makoto just met a few minutes ago. Of course, she's a second year like Makoto is. It is worth pointing out that the manga adaptation of Makoto actually shows a lot more emotion and expressions compared to the games and movies. Because when Yukari is being asked to escort us to our rooms, she asks us if we have any comments, questions, or concerns. We could just always talk to her. But in the games, he does ask about a weird boy who we just saw earlier in the video, if he also lives here too, but Yukari is not aware of this little boy. The next day, we start our first day at Gakukan High School as a transfer student. Of course, Yukari helps us get acquainted with the campus, and upon arriving to homeroom, we meet with this guy who really looks like a Persona 4 character, if I were to be honest, known as Junpei Iori. And of course, there are rumors spreading around that people think that Yukari and Makoto are dating, but Yukari is way more concerned about Makoto telling people that he saw Yukari carrying a gun, but she wants confirmation. Where is Akihiko Sanada? Well, he's been waiting for this, ladies and gentlemen. So on April 8th, we get introduced to the director of Gakukan High School. Yukari, Ikutsuki, and Mitsuru are actually surveilling Port Tatsumi for some strange phenomenal events that may occur, while Akihiko is patrolling the area to confirm such events. It's actually the entity known as the Dark Hour. The Dark Hour is more of a hidden hour that takes place between 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. This is an hour where normies, for the most part, turn into coffins, machinery cease to function, and of course electronics to cease to function. We've already experienced the Dark Hour before, but this is more of an in-depth explanation. Those who don't turn into coffins either held a potential or they get devoured by shadows. How they get devoured is actually by spiritual energy. Once their spiritual energy is completely consumed by the shadow, they go through apathy syndrome, which is pretty much a living corpse in an empty shell. I just realized I've been mispronouncing the location of the entire time. It's actually Tatsumi Port Island. Ikutsuki and Mitsuru both believe that Makoto has the potential to fight these shadows due to the fact that he is not transformed into a coffin during the Dark Hour. And of course, I love how the manga shows Akihiko beating up these shadows, because I believe in the games, Akihiko just reports that he's been fighting shadows and beating them up. This is a very nice touch, I gotta say so myself. The crew has decided to keep monitoring Makoto for the next few days to see if he truly has the potential. And we end up in the Velvet Room. For those who are curious, it's a giant elevator that keeps going up, which is actually really cool aesthetic wise. The Velvet Room is pretty much a world that exists between dreams and reality of the spiritual and physical manifestation. Igor is the one who summoned us to the Velvet Room due to the fact that we signed the contract and we must take responsibility for signing such contract to fate. But until then, Makoto has been given the Velvet Room key. As the day continues, Yukari continues to moderate Makoto Yuki, and she reports her findings to the crew, stating that he is completely unaffected by the Dark Hour's effects. The Dark Hour strikes again. However, this time around, Akihiko finds something amazing, something we've never seen before. He's leading the Big Shadow back to home base, which is not a good thing, and he gets severely injured. They don't have that much time. Yukari's been ordered to go wake up Makoto. With all this commotion, all this shaking, Makoto's already up, and he gets a knife. Makoto and Yukari actually run up all the way to the rooftop because that's their only option of escape. And upon entering the rooftop, we meet our first full moon shadow. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the full moon shadows are actually very, very easy, even though these are the story-based bosses. Because the full moon shadow is attacking both Yukari and Makoto, we have to really fight them. So Yukari is shaking, she can't move because she's afraid to die, and she gets knocked out. But her gun is lying down out in the open. So guns are of course better than knives. The Velvet Room key with this little boy from earlier telling us if do we have the guts to point the gun at ourselves. We shoot ourselves in the head with the gun. Persona, we summon. And upon summoning a persona, we get Orpheus. A persona is a physical manifestation of one accepting the high risks of death. The potential of death is the main theme of Persona 3. That is why Persona 3 is known for its edginess. Orpheus starts the fight off against the full moon shadow, and as the fight goes on, you can see that Orpheus is at a severe disadvantage because it doesn't have enough power to go against the boss himself. And as Orpheus takes more hits, Makoto's psyche also takes a hit as well. And when that happens, Orpheus actually transforms into Thanatos. And for those who are wondering, Makoto primarily uses Thanatos throughout the entire manga series, but Orpheus does still make an appearance in the earlier volumes until mid-game. With Thanatos newly transformed, he takes on the boss himself and clearly becomes victorious. Usually at the end of each volume of the manga series, a running gag or persona news written by Sogabe, and his feelings about each persona character and some of the news that he really wants to see. Do note that because the series has been written for 10 years, Persona news has come a very long way. And you can see his reactions and such. This is actually some pretty cool stuff to read. Jumping into volume 2, a week has passed. Makoto was found at the hospital with Yukari by his side. Yukari apologizes in advance that she's done background research of Makoto without his permission. But in return, she gets us back up to speed of what happened. And of course, she discusses about her story that's related to the incident that happened 10 years ago with the explosion. Junpei has decided to move to the dorms due to the fact that he's been selected as another candidate. Then the crew goes into much more details about what the Dark Hour is and how to eliminate the shadows, as their objective is to eliminate the Dark Hour known as C's Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad. By recruiting new members, C's will get armbands and of course invokers. Invokers is usually the main method to summon a persona. However, there are exceptions. After accepting C's invitation, Mitsuru mentions about Tartarus and she expects the second years to meet with her in front of the school gates of Gekkoukan High School during the Dark Hour. Unfortunately, Akihiko won't be joining the fight due to the fact that he's still in recovering phase from last week's incident. Everyone meets up at the front gates of Gekkoukan High. As the Dark Hour is approaching, Gekkoukan High has been transformed into this gigantic tower, which is the origin of the Dark Hour, with the second year is going to be going on patrol. Now, the manga adaptation does Tartarus very, very differently compared to the games and animated movies. Of course, Makoto has been acquainted as leader of the second years of this exploration for Tartarus. Mitsuru will have to stay behind due to the fact that she will be doing the navigation of their exploration. So they won't be going into the Tartarus Tower too far up ahead. But what I do like about Tartarus's telling in this manga adaptation is that they don't spend too much time with it. No boss floors. They don't spend too much time talking about exploration other than this volume right here. And of course, Junpei being very cocky, Makoto protects Yukari from the Shadow's attack. And Yukari gets very afraid and is on the verge of death. So she picks up her invoker and summons her persona, Io, which is a wind magic user / healer. And of course, she heals Makoto's wounds. And with that, the expedition for Tartarus orientation has concluded. Returning back to the dorms, we are greeted by the boy once more. However, his reason to visit us today is to warn us that another full moon shadow is approaching very, very soon. 2 weeks later, the dark hour approaches once more. This time, another full moon shadow boss has been detected. Mitsuru tells him to go to the station as she makes some preparations. As the second years are waiting for Mitsuru to arrive, Mitsuru appears with this amazing artwork. I gotta say, I'm very impressed with this piece of art. And she reports that the full moon boss shadow has been located in a monorail and eliminate that full moon shadow boss. We get some cliche anime scenes right here. I mean, upskirt shots. For whatever reason, I find Makoto's and Junpei's reaction to Yukari's upskirt shot to be really funny for whatever reason. Inside the train, they find a shadow who actually runs away, and Junpei finds this very offensive, and he believes he could take on this entire mission by himself. Mitsuru actually reports that the monorail station has begun moving due to the full moon shadow boss taking control of the electronics. So the monorail is able to accelerate during the dark hour. And the monorail that they're in right now is going to be crashing into another train at a different track section. And the crew must hurry up because they only have a few minutes to clean the job. Then we see more scenes with Junpei being very cocky, thinking that he could do this all by himself. The crew only has 2 minutes left, and I love how the manga actually shows the time limit. Makoto and Yukari do catch up with Junpei, and they talk about how one can't overuse their persona in a short burst of time. Eventually, the second years meet with the second full moon shadow boss, with only 1 minute time left remaining. So eventually the boss goes down, the crew members work together as a team. With only about 21 seconds to spare, they have to stop the train at all costs. And how did they do this? Makoto just guess where the brakes were. And with that, that concludes volume 2. Alrighty, so the main problems I have with the Persona 3 manga series. You know how we just finished volume 2 just now? We turned a few pages, and guess what? We skipped travel from May to November. I am not joking. Even though this is more of a side story, the main reason why I'm not going to really show you guys this is because this is endgame spoilers. For Frickle's sake, ladies and gentlemen, this is volume 2. And if you don't believe me, let's look at volume 1 again. Turn in the first few pages. Guess where we are right now? November 3rd. I don't know. This problem persists from volume 1 to volume 8. And then 9 through 11. They go into endgame stuff in chronological order. So the stories are written very well for retelling, but the way that they tell it in chronological is a huge problem. And newcomers are going to be very confused with the story unless they keep track of the dates. In conclusion, Persona 3 manga series, I would highly recommend it to those who are big fans of Persona 3. However, if you've never played Persona 3 before, I'd highly recommend checking out the 2 games that we discussed earlier in the video, because despite Persona 3's amazing graphic artworks and of course the illustrations, the retelling of the story, it lacks the chronological order, and you get really lost if you read the manga series first. So in the video that you guys are seeing right now, it's pretty much all the artworks I really love the most from this manga series adaptation. And I think Persona 3 manga series adaptation was done really well. Despite the problems I have with it, I actually much prefer reading the manga over replaying Persona 3 FES. So ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and of course, comment down below who's your favorite Persona 3 character and let me know why. This has been your boy Frosty R&B. All I gotta say is stay chilly, keep gaming. I'll see you all in the next one.